Like the axe in his dream, Gilgamesh wore Enkidu at his side and swore never to be parted from him. I must have been mad to contemplate marriage, he told Enkidu, especially to Ishtar. Gilgamesh schooled Enkidu in the ways of civilization, and then Enkidu taught him the way of the wild places, how the honey ant gathers its winter food, how mistletoe grows without a root, how water can be mined out of the driest desert. They wrestled and raced and hunted and talked, and the people of Uruk breathed a sigh of relief and gave thanks to the gods. Enkidu had roamed far afield into the wildest places. He had seen things which Gilgamesh had never seen. He had swum in both the Tigris and the Euphrates, had stood on the summit of Mount Nisar where the ark ran aground after the great flood, had seen the monstrous Huwawa, protector of the cedar forest, and the scorpion men who guard the roadway to the garden of the gods. One day, as Gilgamesh showed Enkidu the sights of the city, he pointed out the carved stone friezes recording the deeds of Uruk's great men. "Where are the deeds of Gilgamesh?" asked Enkidu. "Here," cried Gilgamesh, spread-eagling himself against the wall. "This blank. So far I've done nothing worth carving in stone. But soon, Enkidu, you and I are going on such an adventure that no wall will be large enough to record it." "We are?" Enkidu too flattened himself against the wall, striking a grand pose. "Where? When? Now?" The very ends of his long hair crackled with energy. "It was you who gave me the idea. Who's the most frightening foe in the whole world?" Enkidu racked his brains. "Gilgamesh is. Ask his enemies." Gilgamesh laughed. "Ha ha! Someone far more dangerous. We're going to fight Huwawa, guardian of the cedar forest, and kill him and bring home cedar wood to build new gates for Uruk." Enkidu stepped away from the wall. Now, listen. You're forgetting I've seen Huwawa. He's a monster among monsters. The trees are small alongside him. His strength is the stuff of legends. He never sleeps. When a fox stamps its paw 60 leagues away, Huwawa hears it. He lives for battle. He was made for no other purpose than to guard the forest. No one goes there for fear of him. Besides, a kind of magic surrounds him. You can't go close without your strength ebbing away. If you had seen Huwawa, "I would have killed him already," declared Gilgamesh. "We have to make our mark, don't we? What are you afraid of?" "Of getting killed?" said Enkidu candidly. Gilgamesh spread his arms high above his head as if reaching up to clutch the hems of the gods. "Then we'll have died gloriously, won't we? And our names will be written in clouds of glory on the noonday sky. Fame is everything, Enkidu, isn't it? Why live if not to make a mark on the world, to blaze a trail through it, to do deeds worthy of remembrance? Do or die!" Both his fists were clenched, his feet set square on to life like a prize fighter. A surge of love and pride thrilled through Enkidu. "Do or die!" he cried, and closed his own hand around the king's upraised fist. "Just do me one favor. The cedar forest belongs to Shamash the sun. Don't fly in the face of the gods. Tell Shamash what you want to do. Ask his blessing." That is how Gilgamesh came to be standing at high noon, in the full glare of the sun, a white kid at his feet, and in his right hand a silver scepter which caught the sunbeams as he spoke. O Sun, O Lord and Master who sees all, only help me do this thing, and I shall build you a temple of cedar wood, wood from your own forests. O Sun, you who are robed in fiery splendor, surely you understand a man's need to cloak himself in glory? Swaying as he prayed, Gilgamesh felt the tears on his cheeks dry to streaks of white salt. Then it was as if a red-hot hand rested on the crown of his head. Shamash had given his blessing. Crowds of curious onlookers had gathered, round-eyed, fearful, wondering. "People of Uruk," cried Gilgamesh, "I go to the forest of cedar trees to cut cedar for new city gates and a temple to the god Shamash. There I shall do battle with Huwawa, the evil one. Pray for me and make offerings to the sun. I shall bring back such glory to Uruk that the name of Uruk will live forever in the annals of the world." The crowd gave a nervous laugh and burst out singing. A clumsy, shuffling dance carried them home to their houses. Gilgamesh and Enkidu went to the forges and gave orders for 2 axes and 2 swords. Armorers and craftsmen went out into the ancient groves and cut willow and boxwood for axe handles and spear shafts. But they sent to Anshan in Persia for wood fine enough to make the king's bow. The axe of Gilgamesh was called Might of Heroes, his bow Anshan. Every stage of the craftsmanship was watched over by Gilgamesh and Enkidu, for they knew that their lives would depend on these weapons. As the golden sparks flew up from the anvil, the elderly counselors of Uruk gathered in the doorway of the forge. Their old heads were white with snow of wisdom. "You are young, Gilgamesh. Youth is rash. We beg you to reconsider. This Huwawa is a thing of spirit and magic, invincible." But Gilgamesh only laughed. "What do you want me to do, gentlemen? Sit at home for 60 years? Wrap up warm in winter and keep cool in summer and stay safe here in Uruk?" The blacksmith passed a finished sword into his outstretched hands. It weighs as much as a grown man, but he handled it as delicately as a newborn baby. The counselors shook their wise old heads. There is no telling young people anything they do not want to hear. They comforted themselves on the way home, saying, "If anyone can do this thing, it is Gilgamesh and his friend the wild man." Ninsun, the king's mother, sent for Enkidu. "Remember to dig a well every evening, Enkidu, and offer up pure water to the sun god every day. Oh, look after him, Enkidu. You are not my son. I did not give birth to you. But bring Gilgamesh safe home, and I shall adopt you as my own. I am relying on you, Enkidu." The wild man bowed his head. For the first time he realized that there was someone else in the world who loved Gilgamesh as much as he did. What a way it was to land in the cedar forest. Even though the friends walked 50 leagues a day and accomplished in 3 days what it would have taken others 6 weeks to do,
They still had 7 mountains to cross before they stood at the forest gate. Carved in a dozen languages were warnings and prohibitions. Do not enter. Cut no trees on pain of death. This forest is protected by Huwawa, terror of the earth. And yet the woodlands beyond the gate were as greenly peaceful as the bottom of a lake. Birdsong rippled outwards from it in tinkling wavelets. Enkidu shoved open the gate. His knees sagged. His head spun. His hands prickled as though stabbed by 1,000 splinters. He jumped awkwardly backwards. Gilgamesh, don't go in there! The magic is too strong. The moment I touched the gate, my strength failed me. But Gilgamesh was already whistling his way along the broad green pathways of the wood. In the center of the forest stood a green mountain, a perfect cone rising up so high that its peak was hidden by a cloud. Its peaceful slopes seemed a perfect place to sleep. Without even troubling to dig a well and refill their water skins, the friends stretched out on the ground. Still, they slept hand in hand, so as to wake one another at the first sign of danger. At midnight, Enkidu woke to the feeling of his knuckles being crushed together. Gilgamesh was sitting bolt upright, his eyes glistening in the dark. I had a dream, he said. I dreamt the top of the mountain melted, and the earth spewed out its blood, fire and molten rock, and so much smoke and ash that the sun turned black. What does it mean? Enkidu laughed and extricated his hand. It means we've come to the land of volcanoes, friend, he said. In this part of the world, the mountains erupt like spots on a young man's cheek. What else did you dream? I dreamt that the earth trembled under me, and clouds of dust flew up so that I couldn't breathe, couldn't see. And everything around me caught fire like kindling. What kind of portent is that for the gods send me? What does it mean? Again, Enkidu laughed. It means that we're in the land of earthquakes. Do you know nothing? The world's skin is like the skin of a lizard. Now and then scales twitch and the earth shakes. What else did you dream? I dreamt a bull, said Gilgamesh, his teeth chattering at the memory of it. Not just a bull, I mean, a giant of a bull, bigger than 20 bulls. It was head down and charging right at you, and there was nothing I could do, nothing. Enkidu scratched his head. Huwawa is nothing like a bull, he said, puzzled. His face is like a lion, and he has fangs like a dragon. I don't know why you should dream, Gilgamesh? But Gilgamesh had fallen asleep, his head on Enkidu's shoulder. When daylight came, he was still sound asleep. Enkidu touched him. Enkidu shook him. Enkidu took hold of him by the ears and banged his head on the ground, but he would not wake up. He was under the influence of Huwawa's magic. The whole day came and went, and still Gilgamesh slept. Enkidu was panic-stricken. Wake up! He bellowed in his friend's ear. Wake up! Must I tell your mother that I let you die in your sleep? Do you want Huwawa to find you like this? He slapped Gilgamesh. He rolled him down the hill. He held their empty water skins over his friend. Oh, why had he not heeded Ninson's advice? Enkidu dug and dug, but found no water. He ran and ran, until pebbles flew from under his feet as sparks had from the blacksmith's hammer. At last he heard the soft tinkle of trickling water. Splashing in the stream, he scooped the water skin through the cool, delicious water. Then back he ran, upending the bag, emptying it into the king's face. At last the dark brown eyes opened. Stretching himself, Gilgamesh picked up his breastplate and put it on. He was perfectly calm. "Let us go and meet our enemy." Enkidu kicked aside his bow in disgust. "You go if you like, but I'm going back to the city. You have no idea. You don't know what you are up against. Me, I'll go back and tell your mother how brave you are, how heroic, how glorious, how dead." Gilgamesh calmly strung his bow. "Don't launch the funeral barge yet. What can go wrong with the two of us side by side?" "Do you really want me to tell you?" said Enkidu. Inside his cedarwood house, the giant Huwawa cocked his giant head on one side and listened. A smile came to his lips, which curled like the bark from a silver birch. He reached out and took down his first cloak of splendor. 6 more hung alongside it, woven out of magic and the fibers of the forest. He opened his door, stuck out his head, and bellowed, "Who has come into the forest? Let him die!" All the acorns fell from the trees, all the nests of the previous spring. He looked, and as he looked, the beam of his looking scythed down trees. He nodded his head, and malign magic rolled down the forest, bluer and deeper than drifts of bluebells. Then he stepped out of doors. The green forest was like grass around his feet. He blotted out the sun. Gilgamesh, caught in the coal black shadow, looked up. Oh, Enkidu! He had never thought anything could be so big. Then Shamash the sun looked down and saw Gilgamesh and his friend like 2 tiny ants in the path of an elephant stampede. The sun breathed in, fetching the warm winds. He reached out to the sea and grasped the north wind and the water sprouts, lightning and phosphorescent light. He turned about, and the elements were twisted into a single whiplash, its thongs sharp with hail and sleet. But the guardian only ran back into his house and grabbed his second cloak. He had been formed to protect the forests, and even the master of those forests could not call him to heel. Gilgamesh was wielding his axe, now hacking at the outermost wall of the lodge to bring it down. 7 walls, one inside another, and inside the 7th the guardian, bellowing flame and destruction. Huwawa put on the 3rd of his 7 cloaks. But with every passing moment, more of the winds of heaven piled up around the cedarwood lodge. They turned back Huwawa's powers like a mirror turns back light. The guardian put on the 4th of his 7 cloaks, and the walls of the lodge bowed outwards. So great was the magic within. Huwawa put on his 5th and 6th of his 7 cloaks, and for 20,000 leagues the cedar forest trembled. At last the 7th cedar wall fell, and Gilgamesh and Enkidu axes in hand, came face to face with Huwawa. 7 cloaks billowed round him like the rays of a rainbow. Magic shone from his open mouth, from the heels of his hands, from the fabric of his skin. Huwawa might be terrible, but he was also magnificent. Suddenly, a cyclone of twisted wind and heat bound him round. He was powerless to strike the heroes dead. "Let me go, Gilgamesh," he said. "Spare me, and I shall be your slave and cut down the trees myself to build you a fitting palace." Gilgamesh hesitated. He glanced sideways at Enkidu. "Don't listen to him," urged Enkidu. "It's a trick. Kill him." Gilgamesh swung back his axe over his shoulder. "But, Enkidu, if we kill him, all that glory will be lost to the world forever." "Don't let him fool you, Gilgamesh." He was not at all sure how long those ropes of wind binding Huwawa's arms would hold him, how long before the giant would squirm free. It took 3 blows to dispatch the guardian of the forests. He sprawled on his face, the trees falling flat for acres around. The phosphorescent glory which had hung around Huwawa went out like a blown candle. He was a mound of vegetable matter, a hummock in the landscape. Dead. Gilgamesh, walking the length of the guardian's dead body, felt the spark of life flare up inside his own. He had survived. He was alive, more than before. All the colors of the forest were more bright, the bird song sweeter, the smells more delectable. The touch of his friend's hand on his arm made him dizzy with joy. They found the tallest cedar tree in the entire forest and hacked it down. It fell with a deafening hiss of leaves. From this the carpenters of Uruk would fashion a mighty gate to the city. Then, in reverence to the sun, Gilgamesh washed himself in the river, put on clean robes, and made an offering of cold water to Shamash, holding up the silver bowl while the noonday heat drank it up in steamy white sips. And looking down, Ishtar, goddess of love, saw the finest sight the world had to offer. A young man covered in glory, triumphant, silhouetted against the sinking sun, a silver bowl upraised, face shining with pent-up happiness. King Gilgamesh.